Fundraising, Randela Manzwa.
Hello. Thank you very much, comrades Mamutonzo Ibambe. I thought that we must start with our own political class. I will request our communications team, in as well as the people who managed to log in here, to switch off their mics, so that we accord only one speaker at a time. To just avert a distraction of the proceedings. Thank you very much, comrades. My name is Karanjat. I am the regional chairperson of the ANC in Baartman, province of the Eastern Cape. I will just open the political class and as well as facilitate with my counterpart, Comrade Yandi Swavach. It is always good to actually preside over a meeting where there are members of the National Executive Committee and members of the Provincial Executive Committee, and I be the chair of that particular meeting. And the summary of the resolutions now lies with me. You're welcome in this meeting. We took a principled decision as the Regional Executive Committee to follow suit in the work of the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC in the Eastern Cape Province, of putting an emphasis in the development of the individual cadres of the organization and inject politics in the leadership and the general membership of the ANC. And we emulated the good exemplar that is set by the provincial leadership, and we took a principled decision to organize this particular political class. Last week, the PEC hosted a lecture where the former president of the country, President Khalima, and the former deputy president of the ANC presented in that particular lecture a paper that talks about the ethics and the revolutionary morality. In engagement with the provincial leadership of the ANC, we took a principled decision that we invite the national chairperson of the ANC, Comrade Utatu Kwetemandash. The lecture is long overdue. Hence, we earmarked it for take place at a time when coronavirus was in an higher state of within the province of the Eastern Cape, and then as well as the entire country. And it ended up as well affecting the preparations. And the national chairperson was as well infected at some point. I remember very well when I was speaking to him, encouraging him to be strong. He told me that when you're corona, it is always good to have the national chairperson present in this particular lecture today. The purpose of it, they've gotten access on whatever that we are doing today. They will be able to grasp the contents and the substantive political issues that will be presented by the national chairperson. We thought that as a region, we haven't actually done justice in the national policy of the ANC in 2015. when the then Secretary General of the ANC presented the diagnostic report. We were preoccupied by peripheral issues. We didn't actually dedicate adequate time in engaging on matters that are actually entailed in that particular diagnostic report. But this is an opportunity for the membership and the leadership of the organization to ponder on matters that are actually characterizing the organization in the present juncture. Because now this particular debate, it's actually taking place at a time when there is no conference, but it's taking place at a time when we are confronted by a variety of political challenges, which the National Executive Committee of the ANC has actually engaged on those particular challenges and devolved some kind of a directive to all lower structures on how such challenges are expected to be handled. I must acknowledge the chair of the province, Comrade Lubabalo Oscar Mabuya, Tata Sengo, was amongst the midst, and as well as the entire entourage of the PEC. Thank you very much. With those few words, you are welcome. Let me hand over to Tata Ukwete Mandashe to take us through.
Program Director, members of the NSC who are here, I haven't seen any. Members of the PEC, Ubejula and Mbonila Usihlalo walapha. And I want a few Omkwe, Olindelwa Dunjwa, a group of them. I'm sure many others I haven't seen. Members of the RSC, Skara, Sarah Baartman, region, which is punching above its weight. It will continue doing so if it continues to engage itself in political education. Members of all branches who attended this lecture, everyone who took an interest in the lecture, whether you are a member or not a member, welcome all of you. I was asked to talk about organizational renewal post-COVID. The first exercise I engaged myself in was the reality of the matter is that there is no post-COVID. The COVID is going to be with us for a long time. The only difference is the intensity of the infections. Therefore, what we should be preparing our members and our branches is to run organization alongside COVID. You know, if we run for cover or fear COVID, it chases you and finds you. It is important for us to prepare ourselves to do it with COVID as a reality in society. The first thing I want to highlight is the fact that organizational renewal in itself is quite a complicated concept in many ways. One, it is that it is talking to an organization that exists, but is beginning to feel that it is weakening in many aspects of its work. And my own view is that when you talk about the ANC is quite old. I'll come back to that point. But the leadership of the ANC is relatively younger. I will come back to and characterize that reality. The second one is that it talks to objective of renewal as a project. So you don't renew for the sake of renewal. There should be clear objectives of renewing an organization. Thirdly is that at the issues that need immediate attention on behalf of the people, it is therefore not a renewal for its own sake. If you have an organization, it has no capacity to take up issues. You have no organization. You have warm bodies. Now, the ANC is an old organization with relatively young leadership and membership. Somebody asked me, are you young? I said, compared to Mandela and Tambo and Lutuli, I'm a baby. That's the reality that is there. And this makes it complex to link the current with the history of the organization. Because what we do today should talk to what the organization is known to be standing for. If we fail to do that, really need a serious program to renew the organization. When many of us talk of a weak organization, we imagine an NC that was operating under conditions of illegality, where discipline and security were intertwined. Now, what we are ignoring is the fact that the organization has been open to all, and therefore it is a mass organization. But what we deprived ourselves of, which we can still try to bridge that, is the analysis of the transition from conditions of illegality to conditions of legality. We never spent time on that. You know, when the ANC was unbanned, the UDF was dissolved immediately, gave way to the ANC. No discussion of the mass character of the UDF and ability to reach out to various aspects of society. That discussion was not there. We gave in correct decision, but lazy in terms of preparing for it. And that is catching up with us today. That's why we talk of organizational renewal today, is ability to facilitate discussions which include revisiting the gap we left in terms of transitioning from condition of illegality to condition of legality, from an organization with few members who were disciplined, who were security conscious, who survived in a small network, comparatively speaking, to a broad church that the ANC is. We need to actually take time to say, these are the gaps we left in not entertaining that discussion. Now, therefore, it is this gap that imposes the discussions, because I may tremble on the toes of others. You know, in Friday, in KZN, there's a chap who has never been to school a single day. He's the councillor of the ANC, called him Didit. That chap, when he raises a problem, do we have the capacity as to mobilize communities against this pandemic? This means it is premature to talk of post-COVID-19, but need to mobilize communities to adjust, adapt their lives to the world with this pandemic, observe the health prescription religiously, save and mobilize livelihoods. We must not only save lives, we must save lives and also save livelihoods. Now, let me just digress a little bit. You know, in the cabinet, 4 of us were infected by COVID-19. All of us are back working. Now, the narrative was, as ministers, noba zifumene i-vaccine ngabe Russia, zihlaba zodwa. Thina siyaphela zona ziyazihlaba ngalabo. That's not the issue. It's the determination in confronting a disease. Skara says, I said, ndizanyuza ngedonga le-COVID. That is the fighting spirit that you must have when you are infected by this. Unfortunately, our education system doesn't, it only trains us to be employees. We look for a job, we look for a job. We never had an education system that prepares us to create jobs. Even if you employ 1 or 2 people, you are contributing in dealing with the crisis of unemployment in society. And that contribution is valuable. This will go a long way in saving the organization from infighting and fighting for deployment. Now, having said that, it will require maturity among ourselves. You know, we are from the Eastern Cape, we are many in Gauteng. When we have a chance to be alone and discuss, we say, if you want to make progress, you are from the Eastern Cape, move out of the province. Because the energy in the province is spent almost wholly on destroying one another, attacking one another, If you are developing and you are growing and you become a target, as a result of that, if you want to make progress, go out of the province. And I think it's an issue that this province must take up as part of renewing the organization. That for Scar and Jadai to develop, it doesn't need to move out of Sarah Baartman. He can develop here and be at the cutting edge of development. Now, we must develop a current message for the ANC. We must take up the issue of shortage of PE and frontline workers. If frontline workers say in hospitals there is a shortage of PPEs, it should be the ANC that is renewed, that is readily available to assist and take up that struggle. If we can't do that, we must appreciate that we're going to become irrelevant. Then we'll appreciate the agency. We will attach to the organizational renewal with purpose the issue of taking up issues affecting us. We must take up issues of corruption at local level. You know, we talked to some of the comrades. Comrade Oscar will remember this, that, listen, big narrative is that there's corruption. You know, we raised 500 billion rand for COVID interventions. And the narrative grew that 500 billion rand has disappeared in our pockets because there were few cases who were actually caught getting tenders irregularly. As a result of that, the fact that 4.4 people received the 350 rand because they are not working, and the fact that about 7,000 people received additional amount on their social grants is disappearing because an ANC that is not renewed allow a negative narrative to take root and not take the responsibility of saying, no, but the reality of the matter, we have so many. Graham, mute. We must be able to take up those issues and counter the propaganda that is aimed at harming the ANC. A renewed ANC is an ANC that has a capacity to counter. In Graham, mute. Graham Goliath, mute. So it means we must be able to take up a narrative and challenge it. Now, then when you do these basic steps, activists will emerge. Then you'll have to take them back to basic political education. Take them through the basic values of the African National Congress, because it is these values that distinguishes a cadre from a person who is around. Humility, the ability to subject yourself to criticism and take it and absorb it with humility. You must appreciate that. You must be nomfanelo. So shout ecaleni because it disrupts a process. So the issue that is important is that selflessness is to give your whole being to the work of the organization. And the sacrifice, you give up your time, you sacrifice, you dedicate yourself, you have integrity. The question, though, is whether we live these values. Then those activists must also appreciate the characters of the ANC, the mass character of the ANC. An ANC that is removed from the people is not the ANC. The ANC must be rooted among the people. That is the mass character of the ANC. The revolutionary character of the ANC is based on the distinguishing values of the ANC. That character of appreciating that, you know, sometimes when we are criticized, we are thieved, we make an argument that is headless, that says, yeah, namabulu ayesiba, meaning that we want to be measured from the lowest common denominator. Now, we can't be measured from the lowest common denominator if we are revolutionaries. If we are revolutionaries, society must be expected to put us above ordinary and judge us accordingly. The non-racial character of the ANC, many things where we call ourselves in derogatory name. You know, we're dealing with a case in the NEC where a leading member of the NC went to a colored communities and called them Mama Busman. And that case created a lot of conflict that we are not understanding the non-racial character of the NC. We are not discussing a national question enough. The liberation movement character. We are a liberation movement that contest election. Now, let me, as I move towards concluding, Comrade Skara, the new tendencies that I imagine, one, eagerness to destroy one another, but using the cover of cleaning the organization. We're cleaning the organization, but we're targeting individuals for destruction. And I call that, if you can look it closely, it has nothing to do with cleaning the organization. It is a revolution that is beginning to devour its own children. And it's an issue that we must look into. You know, one time when I was young, I was traveling through a revolution in France. Ekwakumfopo strong kakhulu Robespierre. Waqala the cleaning of the organization. And a revolution devoured its own children and ultimately devoured Robespierre himself. That is the tendency that we must look into, we must guard against. Is very strong in this province. I must say that. It's very strong that everybody is an angel except the person you want to destroy. We must work on that issue. It's a terrible tendency. It destroys the organization. The second one, I could go to a list of them. This tendency of being easy to just plunge into the president of the organization and attack him. You know, I described it as a choreographed attack on the president, where you'll find somebody in PE writing an open letter attacking the president, somebody in Northern KZN writing a letter, another one from somewhere writing a letter, all of them attacking this president. And it appears to be a mass movement that is very unhappy with the president. And the result of the matter is to weaken the pillars of the organization, with the presidency being one of those pillars. It appears revolutionary, but if you look into it closely, it is counter-revolutionary. Now, the point I want to make is, you know, I was Secretary General for 10 years. Most difficult period for any Secretary General, I boast about that. But one thing that we actually did was to say, which I was criticized of protecting President Zuma all the time. I always emphasize it's not about President Zuma. It's about the office he's occupying. They will protect that office so that the ANC doesn't get into a free fall decline. And I can boast here, you can tell me if I'm wrong, we kept that commitment up to the end. That's why it becomes important for all of us to subject ourselves to a discipline of respect for your decisions. If a decision is taken in a structure where you serve, whether you agree with it or not, you never go out and say, this is the decision, I disagree with it. Because that decision is your decision. You must be loyal to your decision if you are a cadre. And if you want to raise it, you will raise again in the meeting of the structure if you want it reviewed. I think we can talk about organizational renewal from various angles. I took a decision to come and tackle it from an organizer perspective, because those are the people who are actually having the lifeblood of the organization. And then commissars will come and add the political aspect to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the political lecture. I've been instructed by the chair not to do a summary of what we have delivered, and I promise not to. Leadership that is present here, everyone, I greet you all. My name is Yandiswa Vaha. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the region. I'm co-chairing with the Regional Chairperson, Comrade Skara. I just want us to take note that the political lecture is covered live at Eastern Cape TV, which is formerly known as eBay TV. So, and also the channel is 260 on DSTV, and also on national and provincial ANC Facebook page. Also as well on Eastern Cape Herald Live. So those that couldn't connect, we can advise them to go and watch there. Comrades, just before we take discussions, I'll allow two comrades to do a brief response on the lecture, which I think each will have 10 minutes. I'll start with Comrade Udunjwa, then follows Comrade Udifos, the Regional Deputy Chairperson. Over to you, Mam Udunjwa.
No, thank you very much, Program Directors, Slalo, Nosakaleno Bala, and greet the National Chairperson and the national leaders that are part of this, the provincial leadership led by Comrade Oscar Mabuyane, who's the chair, the REC members, branches of the African National Congress, members of the ANC, supporters, nabathandi, nabalandeli be-African National Congress. First, I want to place an apology, Chair, that at a particular time I'm going to leave because there's a meeting that has been called of chairs and whips by the chief whip. But I will be around maybe until 7:30, 8:45. I've been asked to respond, and I've always been saying in my mind, how then do I be a respondent to a lecture that I have not been previewed of what then the main speaker is going to put across. Therefore, my response, I then took a decision, and I will be pardoned, of problematizing this renewal. And in that, I started on the Polokwane question that was raised in the 2007 conference. Then in the political report by then the president, Comrade Thabo, which the question was, what is dividing us as the movement? Because I agree with the chair, with the national chair, that we are in a space of pandemic, and when we are to do our work, we are to ensure that we are to mobilize and work in that environment. But I do think, Chair, that when we are to say we want to renew, we will have to talk about the other difficult questions which are confronting us every day. And among others, it is that of what is it that is dividing us. And unfortunately, that conference didn't have time to discuss that. Maybe delegates, guests, lost an opportunity to really, from that, begin to then say what exactly is dividing the African National Congress. And I want to quickly go to the report of the Secretary General of the African National Congress in our policy conference of the 30th June to the 5th of July 2017, who is now the national chairperson of the African National Congress. And as I was going through that diagnostic report from page 1 to page 25 in depth, I now understood why some of us were uncomfortable about what then was going to be placed in front of us, which, though what was placed in front of us in the conference, in the policy conference, was exactly what we were confronted with. And among other things, that the diagnostic report, which I think is a very important report, with the challenges of COVID, and I agree with the National Chair, we are going to live with COVID. I would have thought that we'll say post-lockdown, because between now, yes, there are things that we are to do now, but we must prepare ourselves post-lockdown, because the pandemic has laid bare our strengths and again our weaknesses as the organization. And in going back, just to pick up some of the issues that were raised in that diagnostic report, is that then the external forces, factors with the specific focus on the following. They raise some external focus with the specific focus on the following. Blurring of the common purpose of the cadres of the movement. The growing trust deficit between the people and the movement. I'm raising this because it is knowledge, trust, our trust in the movement, not sure, and that we are afraid to confront, and that diagnostic report which can understand of, in my view, how many people in that area are working, how many working, the audit. And therefore, if you don't have a strong branch, you're not going to have a branch that is going to able to assist the community of that ward to deal with the challenges of the pandemic, COVID-19, unemployment, and the number of them. The decline in the ideological divisions and factions that have become a seemingly permanent feature of the movement. The rapid collapse of the organizational discipline. The levels of the other faction is not comfortable with is a high-powered English is going to be spoken within that debate to Marty, so that if Tujai is wrong, has been found to be wrong, the faction is a divider to such an extent that what is that Tujai did, which is wrong. The masses and the society in general are looking at us with a microscope and are very concerned about the ANC, which is their movement. They continue to ask themselves difficult questions about what is happening in regards to the revolution of which so many masses, people and our forebears sacrificed their life in protecting it. The grassroots masses and in all walks of life have been concerned because there is a loss of confidence in the ANC because corruption, nepotism, arrogance, manipulative, organizational processes, and the abuse of power. And I'm going to come back to the abuse of power because of an experience that we had here in Nelson Mandela in 2016. As members and leadership, we must be in the forefront to say these things, because we have a contract with the masses and committed ourselves to the renewal of the ANC. And this process, I think, is the process that is beginning to say we are committing ourselves. But as we are committing ourselves, kufuneka singoyiki ukuzitsho impazamo zethu, so that we are seen as really being committed in saying we want to be a better ANC that is going to lead the struggles of the of the masses of our people. We can't delay or escape to attend to this subject. As ANC renewal, it is demanding by the very same masses in society whom we claim to lead. Comrades, we must accept the objective reality that it will not be possible to deal with all the challenges of the organization and the countries that we face, including the matter of ethical leadership, unless we renew the African National Congress. We must equally accept that the renewal is not a process. Renewal is a process, not an event. Sorry for that. Renewal is a process, not an event, and it must be closely monitored. It's closely monitored, its implementation, starting from the branch level to upper structures, vice versa. It is very difficult for those who might be affected and will resist or fight to conform or subject themselves to this organizational renewal. Comrades, it is true that we do have a document which is written through the eye of a needle. It is at this time that we are talking about renewal, that during this process of the renewal of the organization, some of us will fall along the wayside. Some of us will leave or might not then be able to survive this process. And this is something that we have to live with as ANC members. This is not a threat or a factional agenda or purging of comrades of witch hunt, but it is our own making or wrongdoing or in conflict with the law of the ANC and the Constitution. And above all, it is a process of self-correcting. And when you self-correct, you must not run away from the fact that if you are emotional, when you must accept that and then begin to then say, how then do I ensure that I correct my emotions? Criticism is very difficult. One comrade who has passed on, may his soul rest in peace, he once said to me, Nondyebo, criticism is the most powerful process of empowerment. It is painful, it's hurting, but it is a process, because a workshop is a 5%, but 95% is that what is important is that how then do you take that criticism? You must have that ability as a person to see if this criticism, is it building me or is it destroying me? So in this process of renewal, we must take and accept and humble ourselves when we are then being criticized. What is happening in the movement today reminds me the words said by our leader, Comrade Owar Tambo, in the Morogoro Conference in 1969. No one in the open quotes, no one in the movement can be content with the present situation. All must be aware of the deepening malaise, such as we have never known before. And we are, in my view, I'm subject to correction, we are in that process now. We are at that stage, that environment. And therefore, we must then draw lessons. Umqwathi used to say, afuneka ngaxa ukhokhela umane ujonga uthule olungasemva, because akuzubona in moving forward. But my view is that we must draw lessons and acknowledge and accept that maybe we are at that space that the ANC decided in the Morogoro Conference to say things as they are, then the leadership of the movement was able to deal with the challenges that have faced them at the point in time without any failure, and they were equal to the task, and the leadership was able to answer difficult questions and managed to handle any form of contradiction or tendencies that were threatening the existence of the life of the people's movement. Why we don't do that today? We cannot. I'm then going to land, comrades, by saying, as the part of the renewal now and post-lockdown, we need to understand that there's a difference or a thin line between authority and power. In 2016, here in Nelson Mandela, we won all the branches as Lapilux, which were the majority, but we're not in power. And because the reason is because we thought that the power equity and the masses withdrew their power, which then in the renewal of the African National Congress, we must not forget, we are not the power equity, the power it's with the people, and therefore respecting and humbling ourselves within the lead, accept that people are also have that ability to lead. In landing chair, when in 1999, when we were in the campaign in one of the regions in OR Tam, when we went in a meeting, there's an old man that says to us as the leadership of the alliance, Tina sinenensi, and ingxaki yenu zinkokheli zombimbi. It's because when you are corrected, you call us names. What? In landing chair. Within the context, and we are renewing pandemic, and there's going to be post-lockdown, there's high rate of unemployment, there are issues that are to be corrected by the leadership and government. And he said, kufuneka nazi bantwana bamba inkokheli iyakhokhela, kodwa inkokheli iyakhokhelwa. Ngesilungu, a leader is to lead, but a leader is to be led. And in us talking about renewal, with all these challenges, we are to humble ourselves and acknowledge the fact that we are to be led. Because if we don't want to be led, masses are going to lead themselves. Thank you, Chair. That's how then I thought I must problematize this renewal within the context of some of the issues that has been raised by Unkwati. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mamu Dunja. Comrades, we are requested to unmute our videos whenever one is speaking. We are live on the national television so that everyone can see the speakers. I am briefed that when I was introducing myself, I said I'm the deputy chair of the region. Apologies about that. I think I'm the deputy secretary of the region. Umamu Dunjwa is a PC deployee to the region, Isara Baartman. Now I am going to give to the second respondent, Deputy Chair of the region, Comrade Dion. Over to you, Deputy Chair. Also, e-lecture is also live on SABC channel 404. Over to you, Comrade Dion. Deputy Chair. And please take your 10 minutes, don't exceed the 10 minutes. Anino go national chairperson. To feel it as Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Comrade. I'm trying to get the video on, but it's not coming on. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Let me also take the opportunity to thank the national chairperson and our chairperson of the province, and appreciate everyone present and acknowledge them. The The national chair has already said there is no post-COVID-19, which made me thought from the experience and the questions at the lower ground, it's a truth what he was saying. Because what I picked up just for my own daughter, who's 22 years, they say they don't have to wear masks now, the sun is burning COVID away. And I asked, where do you get this? So there's a misperception, and I told them, we will have to adapt to this situation just like we deal with flu, which we are getting. When I was asked that I must also respond on the lecture given, I was wondering, how do you respond and what do you do as when you respond on a lecture? But what the first thing I thought to myself when I was listening to the lecture of the chairperson, I may not be so old, I'm still very young, but I know there was a time, even since the UDF, and when you were called by the ANC or the structures of the Mass Democratic Movement to a meeting as an individual, or you were immediately concerned, and I am still like that. When I'm called by the organization, immediately I interrogate myself because I want to look into what have I done somewhere which I can't recall. There was that not fear, but that fear that did I do something wrong? Why am I called? You question yourself because you get concerned. Because why, if you are called, that you must have done something wrong. What I have picked up, and since after the unveiling and all the stuff, there's an emboldenment. Comrades don't fear anymore the ANC, its structures, and its disciplinary authority. And it's for that purpose when people are called or requested to do something by the organization, they rather opt to claim their constitutional rights and their individual rights and all the rights which are there, except for accepting that they are under the discipline of the organization. That I want to start my response on the basis of that. I have noted a few things which were said by the national chairperson in his lecture, and I don't want to be long, I just want to be very straight. One thing which I was asking myself, what has brought this debate about of renewal? Is it because time has moved on and that we must adapt to the new situations and conditions which are prevailing? Or is it because of the particular conduct and behavior and, as we call, foreign tendencies which has developed since after the liberation and the unveiling of the organizations, that we have come to a point where we have to now start about talking about renewal? And the other point with the chairperson has been raised is renewal is not about, not just mentioned, is that the renewal is not just about structural renewal in the ANC. So, and when those things came up, I recall a time when I went to the moral regeneration launch at Waterkloof, then under the leadership then of the former President Zuma. And when I read up about those things and I see renewal, I immediately think, renewal, how far is this renewal of the ANC from the RDP of the soul, which former our inaugural President Comrade Mandela talked about? The RDP of the soul and the moral regeneration. Is there no linkage between the moral regeneration of society in general, the RDP of the soul, and the organizational renewal? Because if the chairperson said, the national chair, that this renewal of the ANC is not just about renewing structures, but then it means it should also go with the moral renewal of us as members of the ANC and other systems which we are using. So it's a very deep thing, this renewal. It cannot just be limited to a structural renewal. So I fully agree when the chairperson says the renewal is not just about the structural renewal, but it has to do with a total renewal, even of us as individuals and members of the ANC. And by that, it means there should also then be a moral renewal amongst ourselves and within ourselves when we want to renew the ANC. Because if we don't renew ourselves as members of the ANC, then we can't renew the organization and its structures, because you can renew the structures, but there are people serving in structures, and they should also be renewed and they have and morally renewed so that they can stick to the values of the organization. I also noticed, and I must agree, the dissolving of the UDF without any further engagement was a gap which we have left for very long. Comrade President Thabo once visited the old Mid-Karoo region, and he came into the hall in Graafrenet, and he said there in that meeting, what I see here in the meeting is not reflected what I saw outside whilst I was driving here, and it's the first time I'm coming that side. Can anyone explain it? And there was a lot of explanations. I had a simple explanation. When the UDF was operational, there was no issue. All of us were involved. All of us were in the forefront. But I think immediately when on the disbandment of the UDF and the fear and the threat and those swart things which the NP then destroyed, there was no process of trying to keep all of us together. That's why we were in the UDF. And that dissolvement without any transitional phase may have also caused that some of us get lost along the way. And I'm particularly referring to the Western Province side and the fact that in the days of the UDF, they were the colored in the Western Cape, in the Cape, and those of us who were at the University of Western Cape at the time, and I know there's a lot of comrades in the Eastern Cape who we were with at Bush. The coloreds were there, right in front. But I think the gap between the transition of the dissolvement of the UDF and the establishment of structures, there was a gap which we may have not fulfilled at the time. When it comes to the issue of which the chairperson referred to about the negative publicity, our inability to counter the publicity and the negative narratives within the media. I drive a lot because I'm in a big, very vast municipality, and I like to listen to the different radio stations which I receive sometimes. And then I go to RSG, an Afrikaans station. I think what we are missing, we are not really concentrating to respond to the Afrikaans media. And I must say, the Afrikaans media has a vast audience in South Africa. And not all of people who speak Afrikaans are necessarily verkrampt. And I don't think we have a mechanism to monitor the Afrikaans media if we come to the issue of non-racialism. We allow it to operate and flourish and just distort in this country. Sometimes I think that RSG is a really some of these associations which just are anti-government. But we don't have people who concentrate on responding to that platform so that we can keep a correct narrative. I can also blame myself, but I have never phoned in. But I think there are those areas which we are totally leaving to continue on its own, where we don't react to so that we can correct the negative narratives which are there. So I think it's an area which we need to strengthen if we want to really capture the whole of society in how we respond to the negative narrative which is against us. I must agree also with the chairperson, we cannot measure the ANC against the previous apartheid government on the basis of what they do. I even get frustrated when comrades want to compare the ANC against what the DA is doing. We are a liberation movement. I'm not saying we should not take note of good things and bad things, but really we are a liberation movement. We have a history, and we should not be measured that if they have stolen, we say they have stolen, and so why do we make a noise now when we are stealing? That is not what we should be arguing. There's nothing right in stealing. If they have stolen, it doesn't justify we are stealing. So I must agree, we are a liberation movement, and we should be far above and beyond reproach, and we can't compare with other political parties within the country. I think I've raised the issue. The issue of non-racialism is a real thing. It's something really. But what I think, what I've picked up now, and I don't know, but maybe it's my own observation, since Donald Trump came to the fore, there is an emboldenment even within South Africa. There is an emboldenment among some of our white community people of coming very stronger with the culture of superiority. And I don't know whether they are emboldened by the conduct of Donald Trump and so on, but here you can experience it at the grassroots level. So the issue of non-racialism is something which we should seriously focus on within our renewal in the country. I must also say the self-empowerment is very important. Our comrades, there's a lot of documents of the ANC. There's a lot of policies which we must just read and continue reading and self-empower us so that we can capacitate and empower us to defend the ANC and to defend the struggle we have fought. Because our struggle is being disowned because of the shenanigans which are going on, and sometimes we seem to feel unable to defend our struggle as if we have fought to steal. We should be able to defend the struggle because it was a justified struggle, and if we don't defend it, we can just as well say goodbye because the people will lose the hope in us. Ma'am Dunjo have referred to the diagnostic report. I think comrades must understand there's nothing wrong in repenting. There's nothing wrong in repenting and to rehabilitate. When the organization, I don't think the ANC as a caring organization is so brutal that when you've done wrong, it wants to punish you for life. I think the organization wants to act in a corrective manner. Just like we say, when we send people to jail, they must go and rehabilitate. So comrades mustn't take the actions of the organization in trying to renew the organization as wanting to put us in the dustbin. But I think we should also, where they were wrongdoing, we should repent and we should rehabilitate and we should give the organization space then to proceed whilst we are busy with our rehabilitation. Because even prisoners are forgiven and sinners are forgiven by God. You don't just dump them there and there's no chance for them ever. So those of us, all of us, when we've done something wrong within the organization and we know it's wrong, we should really, within our own conscience, allow the organization to continue with its works while we sort out our things and so on. So I thought I would like to add those things. You know, the issue of technology, we have now been forced by COVID-19. It has fast-tracked us to come to having meetings like this. And I think that there are good outcomes of COVID-19, notwithstanding the fact that it's a pandemic and it has done serious damage. And we must use the lessons we are learning from this pandemic to empower the ANC and to strengthen our operations, like a lecture like this today. We have many people who have access to be able to listen to it now. And we have been pushed by this pandemic to use this technology. So we must make use of the technology to advance the renewal of the ANC. Thank you. Let me just end by the thing. Comrade Kgalema once made a presentation or something to the ANC caucus in Parliament. There is a document on that thing of what he was presenting to Parliament. And I recall and I remember there's one thing he raised in that document he was presenting to the caucus of Parliament. He talked about we are not there in Parliament to howl and so on, or in any legislature, but our argument should be of superiority, and our argument should have logic, and that is what we need to empower us so that we don't just want to bulldoze. We should argue and use these platforms to argue. As Comrade Kgalema explained to the caucus, we should be superior in our arguments in the public domain and in the battle of ideas. Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary.
Now, thank you very much, Comrade Dion. Comrades, the floor is yours, not for only to raise questions, but in as well as to contribute immensely on the subject matter at hand. Equally so, the political class is not circumscribed to Sarah Baartman. Anyone, even if it's coming from another region, in any sphere of leadership, is welcome to contribute and participate in the lecture. Comrade Luntu Sokutu will assist me in terms of identifying hands. In the gadget, there is a proviso for people to raise hands. I'm not a person of second and third and fourth rounds, normally. Can I take hands, comrades?
Chair, the first hand that is up is PEC member Comrade Kulu Mamatana, Comrade Anthony, that is the third hand, and then there's Comrade Luvuyo Mayeni, there's Comrade Clifton Boysen, there is Mamus Try, Comrade Mahasi, Mampumzile Oliphant, and Comrade MW2 Majumza, yes. Comrade Usi Sigwanda. Those are the hands that are up now, Chair. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the 11th hand, Chair, is Comrade Andile Mosha. Those are the hands, Chair. Maybe we can take those for now.
So sorry, man, Chair.
The comrades that are unmuting without being noted, we will have to remove them. We don't unmute. Thank you, Chair.
Andikwazi uraise ihlanza apha, ndiyacela mani unotwa kule round because ndiyazama unyola kule nto iyandibetha le system ndikuyo nguNtabeni eNdlambe.
Comrade Ndabeni after Comrade Mosha.
Mhlawumbi, Chair, let's advise that those who can't raise their hands on their gadgets, they must write on each chat so that they can be noted rather than disturbing his speakers when speaking. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Comrades, we are quoting Iman Galo. Can you mute, comrades? There's only one chairperson. Can Comrade Gift manage the, from your side so that we can sing at the same time, but we can't be able to speak at the same time. There are as well comrades who are not muted. They are busy with other extramural activities out there. Comrades, we will strictly allow only 2 minutes. 2 minutes contributions. Can I allow Tatukulu to come in? And immediately after Tatukulu, Ngokwala order, Comrade Kulu, Comrade Matana, Comrade Densi, number 3, Comrade Bayeni, number 4, Comrade Clifton Boysen, number 5, Comrade Mamunen Seswai, number 6, Comrade Andile Mahas, number 7, Comrade Pumzile Oliphant, number 8, Comrade Maputi Machumza, number 9, Comrade Gwanda, number 10, Comrade Andile Mosha, number 11, and Comrade Ndabeni, the last speaker. Let's go, comrades.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair, Comrade Skara. Greetings to the leadership. Chair, without wasting time, let's accept and welcome the address and input by the National Chairperson, as well as the responses by the other comrades, Comrade Tunjwa and Comrade Tifos. Chair, one, organizational renewal is not an option for us as the ANC, but a revolutionary imperative, Chair. Because, Chairperson, as we continue to call us the leader of society, the very society, Chair, is beginning to disown us. And as revolutionaries, Chair, we must always tell ourselves that this society is not owing us anything, but instead we owe the society, Chair, and we owe the society a lot. We owe the society ethical leadership, good governance, service delivery, corruption-free leaders. And therefore, Chair, if we are to address all these, we have to renew the organization. And the next area I would like to raise, Chair, is that our forebears, those gallant fighters, those heroes and heroines of our revolution, who led before us, handed over the organization to us intact. And in that, Chair, we have a responsibility to hand over the organization to the next generation. And if we are to do that, we must know that we must ensure that renewal takes place now, not later, and not in a rhetoric. Lastly, Chair, engaging in the public discourse, we have to do that positively about the organization and engage in the battle of ideas and ideological struggle more comradely, and stop with this narrative, this thing of scandalizing other comrades and the leadership in social media and other platforms, because tomorrow we will need the same people to support the organization. Thank you very much, Comrade Skar.
Mama Tana.
Thank you very much. In awaiting the input by the National Chairperson, leadership of the Sarah Baartman region, leadership of the Provincial Executive Committee, Eastern Cape, thank you very much ngale opportunity yale political school. I think, Chair, the issue is organizational renewal. Linene eliti, there's no other time to renew the African National Congress other than because of the nature of the African National Congress and the fact that ANC in its nature is the leader of the society. But if you look at its society, it distance the gap between the society and the African National Congress today. It tells you very clear, but there's no other time other than today. Ekunideka intoba ANC, it renew itself. But that is it make a chair in renewal. We should have a very clear programs that seeks to cleanse the ANC to the society. Sifanele bakhe kule process yoba si cleanse ANC, si delay very radical ne issue ye corruption. We should take a stance. I understand we're in the process, but it should not be a lip service. We should deal direct with leadership. Singabna fear or favor, to deal with the issue of corruption. That's number one. Because you won't renew the ANC to the public. In fact, you are not renewing the ANC for us. We are renewing the ANC for the people and to bring back its trust yabantu to the ANC. Therefore, in critical areas that needs a society gaining trust back to the ANC, it's very important as part of our program. Kule process of renewal. Uyibeka kahle ke umama uDunjwa xa esithi ukurenewisha, it's not an event, it's a process. But the process is very important to have a very clear program. That's number one. In the process of renewing the organization, we should be able into yokokubana ama-comrade akhe azidistance kwi-factional tendencies. You can't renew the organization in the process you are creating groups that fights the very intention of the organization to renew itself. Ama-comrade after the conference, awachithakali respect leadership. They start to fight against the very leadership. We need everybody who claim to be a member of the ANC are committed to the cause of renewing and cleansing the ANC. I therefore get chairperson, national chairperson, saying to the ANC as the member of the ANC, all of us, izandla zethu, mazisondele ekuthetheni nge-corruption, not necessarily to talk about it, but to action it, to distance ourselves. Society is fed up of seeing leaders being filthy rich. The process, in fact, go back closer to the ANC, nakwi leadership, automatically uzaba rich. Therefore, the issue of corruption, if an day-to-day agenda. Eyokugqibela ke Chair, ndizohlala phantsi.
Udongena nakwi-3 ukuyifongo kunokupisi members masikhokhele ngomzekelo.
Ixolo, i-service
Comrade Kensi, imalo
be
Comrade
inspected.
Matana.
Xolo,
Comrade Matana, yima kaloku. Comrade Kensi, you are the third person.
Thank you, Chairman. Greetings, Chairman. Let me also greet the chairperson of the province and greet the chair of the national, Comrade Mandash. Mine is very brief, Chair, in renewal. When the ANC starts speaking about renewal, my first thing I check and start with is by the branch of the ANC, which is the basic. I think we should come back as an ANC to the basic. What is a branch? A branch is a membership. That is a branch, and currently not the BEC. Now, my understanding in the ANC, in your BEC, you have all your structures, your health, your housing, your SGB. It's when the BEC will know what is going on with a branch in your community itself. The branch is the most basic who are supposed to fight COVID-19, fight corruptions. But I think there's a lack currently, which we should come back as an ANC, to come back to the masses, because if we come back really to the branches and how does the branches operate constitutionally and not BEC's chairpersons and secretaries acting like they are a branch, I think we will come closer and act in the constitution wise, set your monthly meetings with your general meeting, with your branches, and go to conferences and come back, not forget and share it with, let the broader community can understand how does the ANC operate. It's an input, and I really think we should come back to that, because there is that lack if we talk renewal. We don't renew our branches there. But there are certain things that we should renew our mindset. How does the ANC operate and how must we do things? Let the people stop blaming the ANC. The people must know what is going on. The ANC, what I know is the masses, is the ANC. That is, Chair, you come to this corruption, the chairperson touch on audit and leadership and oversight role. We as an ANC, if we lead, we should make sure the people we deploy in these positions do their oversight role properly for the ANC. Because I normally say you can't blame the organization. You should blame individuals in the ANC. So that is the other aspect that we should look up, not deploy as chommy. This one is going to listen to the other one.
You seem to have muted yourself, Comrade Dance.
Speak out in the ANC, of course, you become then an enemy. It cannot be correct. You can become an enemy if you're protecting and defending the ANC. I think I don't want to go. I want to obey your rules in terms of your 2 minutes. But there is serious issue that we need to check in the ANC. Lastly, Chair, I consistently are saying the ANC is a non-racial ANC. And when I raise this issue, some comrades understand me wrong. We should recruit the colored people in the ANC to bring them closer into the ANC because they want to be in the ANC. And we should do that, because we should go and focus on Basel February program. And we deploy colored people into the community to speak the ANC and recruited because we're going for 2021 here and we must work as a leadership and stop fighting each other here for petty case. Thank you very much, Chair. Let us not delay your question.
Comrade Bayeni.
Thank you very much, Chair, and Masibulise emhlanganweni and protocol observed. Chair, sizawurespecta ixesha lakho, sibulele lithuba kodwa ke kule topics iphetheyo namhlanje on my part kukuthi nje into yokuba i-organizational renewal, especially when it comes to the African National Congress, should not be looked individually in terms of the ANC car, but it should be a multi-pronged approach in response to that diagnostic report siyaziyo sasiyifumene ku-NGC. But importantly as well, it should be a reflection on us assessing what are the current environmental issues or the current environmental scanning, because it's not always going to be what we have discussed in our corners and circles as the ANC, but it will always be important for us to take note of what are the people or the society expecting from us and saying, and their belief in the ANC. So it should be two-pronged. And when it comes to the actual ANC survival, I think apart from just talking and reminding people of what must be done, maybe I'll be on concurring a bit with Comrade Daisy that it should be about what we're doing at branch level. How long and how often do we induct our members to understand what is the ANC about? Do all our members in our branch membership understand them? But also when it comes to the survival of the ANC, if only we can get to a point where leadership here to understand that when you are in a position, it does not mean it's your entitlement. Positions are meant or are there just to control and guide the functioning of the organization or the structure so that there is no chaos. But a tendency here is for us to believe and behave as if we are entitled to positions. But also looking at the public image, Slalo, I think for us, it's not enough that we worry and want to jump when there is a widespread talk about corruption, especially when it's labeling national and provincial leaders. But also for us to ask ourselves, what is it that they think of us as an organization? What is it that they think of us as ANC members? Because for me, that's where the image should be of interest for us. That next do they really wake up and feel by ANC member that is next door will make and change their lives, will make a difference, would accede to their calls or correct or concerns abanazo peklalini. Benifuna uraise nje ezo nto zimbini Sihlalo, otherwise siyayibulela le lecture, siyakhula nathi isincedisile nale COVID.
Comrade Soloms. Comrade Clifton. Comrade Clifton, Poison. Okay.
Yes, Chess. Thank you very much, Chair.
Continue.
Let me greet the national chairperson, the provincial chairperson, the regional chair, and all protocol observed. Chair, let me start off by saying a quick quote from Che Guevara. I'm not a liberator to check. Liberators do not exist. The people liberate themselves. Close quote. The second quote is open quote. The first duty of a revolutionary is to be educated. Close quote. But books always used to say to us, revolution the revolution is about people, and people can be stolen. Chair, the ANC remains the leader in the process of social change, as demonstrated by our delivery since 1994. Of that said, the ANC must retain its dual character as a liberation movement and a political party. We must be in the forefront, Chair, as bread and butter issues. That is a duty of a branch. Chair, coming closer to the renewal of the ANC post COVID-19. I'm not part of ANC of the REC. I am not part of a PEC. I'm not part of a sub-region, but I'm a normal ANC member currently. But I think also this renewal goes to the fact that in the branch I'm staying in, there's no branch for up to 2 to 3 years currently functioning. It's only few membership, certain individuals who are trying to run the organization, which are struggling because there's no branch. And I can so safely say it goes across in our sub-region, it goes across in some of our in other sub-regions in the region. You know, Chair, why I'm saying this and why I'm not participating is because of factionalism. You see, when our problem is as ANC members, when we differ, we become to take it very personal and then become factional. Even if you do something right, even if you raise something right, people will check and look at who says this thing, because now it's not my faction. This thing must be shut down. So I'm saying, in order for us as the ANC at the branch level to renew ourselves, we need to go back to the basics, is to recruit, to have street committees, and to have regular programs as the ANC at the branch level. But what we are busy with currently is we are busy destroying each other and not focusing on organizational processes and on the organization. Because the people out there are hungry for the ANC. The people out there need our leadership. But the main question I'm having, and the main question, are we there? Are we there for the people? I listen to Maduna say talk about criticism. Yes, it is good for to someone to give criticism to someone, but that criticism must be constructive in terms of building. A weak ANC and a weak state, it is a twin danger, and that must be dealt with. So I'm saying, Chair, I today take a pledge that from now on, I must lift myself up. And I hope each and every member of the ANC will have that in them, that we must defend the organization. There's no way that an ANC member, there is no way that an ANC leader can talk with people outside in the street on the weakness of the ANC. People, we must as leaders, we as members must rectify it. On corruption, it's nice to talk about corruption, but I'm saying, and I'm going to say it again, if any one of us have a proof of corruption, your duty to go to the police station and open a case. Now we're labeling the organization as a corrupt organization because of certain individuals. The organization is cleaning itself because we can see in terms of certain cases, the Hawks arresting them, people are being removed because of corruption. We must not blame the organization and label it as a corrupt organization, but Tina as members, those ones of us are the ones who is corrupting the organization or themselves. So, Chair, I wanted to raise those things. But lastly, if I'm a problem in organization, if anyone's a problem in organization, individual must perish for the survival of the organization. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Comrade Thomas Chwai.
Nkosi Sihlalo, thank you very much. Mandibulise kusihlalo kaNdlunkulu. Bulisa inkokheli zonke ezikhoyo zephondo neze-region.
nditsho uba le topic yitopic esabuya nayo econferencing ngo-2017. There were two fundamental topics: unity of purpose and no organizational renewal. We should ask ourselves, okokuba, what did we do about those resolutions? Did we come back and establish a program to deal with one of those? Because remember, bekuye abantu pha abambalwa to the conference. Now, how do we take other members of the ANC, which is majority, that did not attend the conference? So I just want to raise that issue first, National Chair. The unity of purpose, for me, it is critical in the organizational renewal, because it talks about the organizational value. The organizational value. Anyazi into lapha phandle okanye anikayiboni kahle. The way abantu abasijonga ngakhona babona abantu be-ANC aba-arrogant. It was raised 2011, it was raised in 2016. Very arrogant members of the ANC. They've got no hope on the ANC because of us. The second issue, Chair, is that one of the critics, the critical areas, the unit, it enhances effectiveness. And if we are not united, the ANC will never be effective. Because and in that, people become confused. They confuse the city because we are not united. The second one, in the organizational renewal, Chair, we have agreed and adopted the view that says this is a people's movement, which is an agent for change. And we have forgotten how the ANC was challenged before 1994, even by international forces. And when we came, we forgot what were the ingredients that the ANC used to sustain itself from those forces, to secure itself from those forces, for its survival, the organizational integrity. The architect of the apartheid national chair is life. Menyao, it shows is partwing about. Very clear in the Gugba, Tina, sine laxity. Asiboni in the Gugba, Lumdu peteli lizwe, iminyaka, umengenyao, and the Kabezela chair. One of the DDGs, the same Nigeria from Chilwanzi, uphuma jele for 15 years ngenxa ye corruption. Amisele a commission, a CEO. He came with a very, very clear program. Etaza indoba, what happened? Kagela klesha by petty corruption. Uti, the social distance. Corruption distances the people away from their government. The second one, it undermines development. Uti ngoku ndimisele le commission, ndifuna unceda because ndiyibonile, ndiyivile ngoku kwam. It's going to be very, very important, Chairperson. Domku. The two issues that we came out with 2017, ANC might draw a very clear program. Udilishwane ne unit of purpose, ne organizational renewal. A siniki dignity, siniki integrity on the organization. I wanted to raise those few issues, Chair, to say, le theme. But le theme, you say, look, situation means Kumangaba, Sasmuele, Kuyangela Classes Velis Gombe. Sisakelas Gombe, Upper Sky. Lows are clearly, ubambelele kweyakhe iposition. I-ANC ayinamntu. The organization is left alone because inkomfa siyenza program, and it's an event. It's not a program of the ANC, it's an event to really renew leadership. But when you come back, there's a leader that has been elected by the majority. You must follow suit. Sihleli apho ke ngoku. Kanti uba ngamsasibe sadisha no unity lo no organization renewal ngekubhetere. Thank you very much, Chair.
Comrade Mafas.
Mandibulele sihlalo. Ndicinga umama uNancy ingathi besikhe sakhokasa. Che, mandithi qala ndibulele kwisikhokelo seSarah Baartman Regional Leadership ngale program iqhubayo. Ndibulise ku-provincial chair. Ndigqibe ndithi chair, all protocol is observed. Ndibulise kakhulu apha kusihlalo wenhlangano kakhongolose. Chair, ndicinga uthe
We can't hear you, Comrade Mafas. Comrade Oliphant. Sawuphinda simnike xa eboyile. Comrade Oliphant.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to the national leadership, the provincial leadership, and yourself in our united and formidable region, Sarah Baartman, under your leadership. Comrade Chair, we welcome and appreciate the input at this political class by the national chairperson of the organization. Chair, it is critically important that we take stock of the brand ANC, which I shall always raise my concern around the damaging and the paralyzation of this brand ANC by individuals whom I will always classify as people that came to the organization to use the talk that says a crocodile, when it crosses the river, the monkey jumps on it because the monkey can't swim, and going and rush for greener pastures.
Comrade Ukekana. Comrade Eunice Kekana. Yes.
Comrade, please mute.
Yes, proceed, Comrade Oliphant.
Thank you very much, Chair. There will always be individuals, Chair, that see the ANC as that crocodile to cross the river and climb on its back for greener pastures, not having the organization per se in their minds, but to use the ANC name to loot, to commit corruption, to divide the organization so as to further their own selfish agendas. Now, Chair, we are in a quagmire here today where the ANC is under siege. The ANC is being lambasted on left, right, and center. On the national agenda of national media, every day and every night, you will hear people phoning in programs attacking the ANC, as if these individuals that are committing wrong are doing that on behalf of the ANC resolution, whilst they are doing those on their own individualistic programs. Now, Chair, the brand ANC is under siege. It is the responsibility of every revolutionary and every committed cadre of the ANC not to act as linesmen, but to wake up and say, in the love of the organization, I shall rise and defend the ANC.
We are charged with that responsibility, Chair. Chair, the diagnostic report tabled by the current national chair during his term of office as the SG is explicit. Now, as much as we can say it's explicit, Chair, what is this that we are doing in following and implementing, in fact, that diagnostic report tabled by the national chair when he was SG? Chair, the organization, we cannot run away from the fact because the brand is tainted and there is that trust deficit between the organization and the masses. Now we are charged with a responsibility not to be spectators, but to rise and say, we will come up in defense and repopularize the ANC. We've got that responsibility. Siqale abazalwane enkonzweni siphume siyodefenda inkonzo. This is our church, which is the ANC. The people have got trust in the ANC, but because of these lootings and stealing of monies of the state by those individuals, iyawudamage ke umbutho. Lastly, Chair, as I am going to land, Chair, the ANC is the leader of society. Now, why are we creating own goals? Is it because we want to see the ANC diminishing, or is it because we've got an agenda of self-enrichment? Now, I am thankful, Chair, under your leadership, you are actually navigating us as branches of the ANC and sub-regions to make sure that we build the ANC not only for elections, but we build the ANC because the hope of the people still resonates with the ANC. I am really grateful that we have got this opportunity to express ourselves in respect to what has been actually tabled by the leadership of the ANC. I so wish, Chair, that as we move forward, we shall always make sure that we jealously guard against anyone who's got an agenda to divide the ANC because he or she wants to see the ANC perishing. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Comrade Magas, are you back?
When corner chair.
Kuba Kemshega.
Okay, enkosi Hlalo. Hlalo mandilende ngelithi. Uhlalo uthi. This is not about the state of the organization, but our ability to do more than just to do door to door. Chair, mhlambi ke bendizawuthi kuye, what is to be done? Because kwi-policy conference le ithethwa ngamaqabane wonke, ezi zinto were diagnosed. Ezi zinto, Chair, were diagnosed, and it was the cause of the decline in the ANC. What again as the beginning of a process of self-correcting. There were many aspects, Chair, that uhlalo kwehlisa kwi-diagnostic report yakhe that needed immediate attention. There were 7 of them. But Chair, I think we're failing to focus on solutions. And what's there, Chair, and how they to regain the leadership of society. Kodwa Chair, inye mna into engicinga uba izazifanele. Uma umenza uthetha kahle, lento ye-unity ayithethwe ngu-OR Tambo kudala ngo-1991. Wathi kuzo zonke ezi zinto laphezulu nditshilo, thina we were able to foster and defend the unity of the ANC and the unity of our people in general. Inye ke Chair into ezasincedisa, ANC, we really need to find ourselves a formula so zibuyisela back ebantwini. Wayithi upresident ungena kwakhe bathoceleni love back. We need to be serious because our people will only be convinced
up until
Comrade Umali. Comrade Umali Wasamakana. Yes. Proceed, Comrade Makhas.
No, Chair. We are only going if we're serious about leading them. Chair, Comrade Stella, the Segu Youth League now was giving us a topic. Some was part of a topic, it is scarcity of leadership. And was must go to get so are we the right leaders that can be trusted with the revolution of a country? Names get change of the and the leadership of the province, the region. We need to go back and uphold the ethics, the values, the tradition of the ANC. Kuba Chair, at least you must adhere to a high standard of what behavior. Abantu be protest against maybe unethical behavior or our own leadership. They do so, not our own hatred, but feeling betrayed as they expect higher standard from our revolutionaries. Remember, it is a parliament band. So we owe it to ourselves to analyze our ANC and the society in detail, the implication of a movement that has been to power and control the resources. Noko besithethile uthethile uComrade Gwetemantashe ngo-27 nyanisele umamunensi uhlwayo sisahleli phasi ngabanye masusukeni ke Chair, because eli xesha sikulo is a moment where our countries will begin a new hope and decade of hope, expectation and promises and opportunities. Despite abantu bethu besokola, despite especially the majority, we must remain united in our resolve to overcome the challenges of the singahlali enkomfeni, Chair. We must renew ourselves. We must renew our organization. Ukuba sifuna abantu bayayithanda i-African National Congress paphandle. Yabona ke Chair, if we don't do that, Chair, we will find ourselves at the end of our term of offices, having to report exactly the same problems that we identify by membership who were there before us, 2006, 2011, 2007, and 2019. We are leading, Chair, in a very difficult period where Satan abas ingelos ngo Satan. Enkosi Chair, abule.
Comrade Maputi Machomso.
Thank you very much, Comrade Regional Chairperson, Comrade Skaranjadai. Greetings to the National Chairperson, Utatu Gwete Mandashe. Greetings to the leadership of the province led by Comrade Oscar Mabuyane. I want to follow suit, Chair, to the comrades who are welcoming the input, the informed input presented by our National Chairperson, Utatu Gwete. I think, Chair, it has reminded me basically in 2017 when the ANC declared a centenary of Oliver Utata Utambo. Utatu Gwete presented a paper in that centenary. And that paper basically, if I can coin it and link it to the organizational renewal today, I think it is very relevant. And what he has presented, Chair, in that paper basically, and I think he focused on two important concepts. And one issue on that concept is that he was focusing on revolutionary morality. And he was also focusing on the value system. And I think those were critical issues that he has presented. But I want to go deeply on what he raised about the revolutionary morality. He said when he was painting Utatu Oliver Tambo that Oliver Tambo represents the ethics and the revolutionary morality. And he said that Oliver Tambo remain as a life symbol exemplary of the concept of the revolutionary morality in practice, not in theory. That's what the National Chairperson, at the time when he was the Secretary General, when he was presenting the paper. He said when he was also alluding deeply on the revolutionary morality, he said, Revolutionary morality means leaders must do exactly what they're supposed to do and lead by example. And he further said, the national chair in that paper that he presented, that when you are leading, people must learn something on you. And I felt that it is quite important to link that with the organizational renewal. Because if we speak on this concept of revolutionary morality and also with the organizational renewal, it should not be a blank chair. It should be coined together with the political program that seek to give a clear political objective as to what is it as an African National Congress we seek to achieve and what we stand for and what is it that we exist for. And I think comrades that have spoke before me have articulated very correctly. And it tells you very clear that in the African National Congress, they understand the theory and what the ANC stand for and what is expected on them. But what is lacking, Comrade Chair, is the actual practicality of the theory that we are referring to. Now, few things that I want to raise, Chair, is that which I think the chairperson, the national chairperson, should perhaps come on, maybe by assisting. I want to check, Chair, whether from where we seated, the program of the organizational renewal, don't we think that basically we need to, climb together with the what is called the revolutionary morality theory? I'm raising this deliberately, Chair, when I'm raising this, because if you look at the current state of affairs, what is lacking is not necessary that the comrades don't understand what is expected on them. It is just comrades, they lack what you call the political conscience, which gives a serious disclaimer in terms of the value system, in terms of the revolutionary morality. And I think Utatu Gwede, I want to commend him, Chair, that he's been very consistent when he's speaking on these issues, particularly on this one that I'm referring to, the two concepts that I referred to. The question that I want to ask, Chair, relates to the balance of forces. I know you have tried to come in terms of the dangers that we confront as an African National Congress, but in the context of balance of forces, particularly at the domestic level, Chair, I will want to check, Chair, whether have we looked in this process of renewal the issue of the infiltration of the African National Congress by those who see it as a vehicle for them to succeed? Have we looked at in a thin eye and in a context of balance of forces? Because I think that's one of the key things that I think basically we need to look. And I think we can go far, Chair, if really we can able to basically deal with these issues in that manner. As I'm landing, Chair, the then SG Utatu Gwede, the current national chairperson, he said when he was closing that centenary of Tatu Oliver Tambo, he said, revolutionary morality depends on the quality leadership. And so what it means we should focus in building the quality leadership of the African National Congress in order to translate the quality leadership in government as well. You know, Chrisani at some stage fought with Comrade Joe Modise after he was appointed by Utatu Oliver Tambo to be a political commissar. You will recall that Tatu John Modise was a chief commander of Mkondo Wesizwe in exile. and the politics of tribalism, which led to factionalism, started at that level. You will recall that comrades from Transvaal never take instruction from Comrade Krisani at that particular time. And comrades from Cape also never take instruction from Comrade Joe Mudise. And that has led to politics of tribalism, and that has led to politics of factionalism. And I think OR was very clear that the only chore to deal with these issues, it's only when we invest to the political education. So I appreciate, Chair, as I'm landing, that the initiative that has been done by the regional leadership of the ANC led by yourself, but of course as well by the Provincial Executive Committee, because it is the first time in this cohort when branches, Chair, when ordinary members have an opportunity to interact directly with the leadership. So I think that is this process.
Time is up, Comrade Mapudi.
This process, Chair, has created that. Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry for taking long.
Comrade Tovela Skwanda.
Nkosi Sihlalo. Sihlalo mandibulise man ku national chairperson of the organization. Sihlalo, one, renewal is good. But I think first we must go through a postmortem as organization so that we can identify why the organization need to renew. It also be correct that we use political terminology loosely, as we did with the so-called rebuilding process, which was the skeleton without flesh. We should also ask, Chair, why we need to renew the movement. And in doing that, we must be honest to ourselves. Secondly, Chair, in the triple challenges faced by the country, namely unemployment, poverty, and equality, we need to add the fourth one, which is corruption, as the challenge, Chair. Only if the ANC want to win back the trust of the people and continue to be the leader of society. And Chair, if the ANC can fight this corruption and take a bold step, we will renew the ANC and its strength to practice clean governance. Wherever it governs, will keep it relevant to the masses of this country. Lastly, Chair, in renewing the organization, ndicinga ba masingayeki lento ye membership ecollapsayo kulento yale new membership system. I think ngenye ezosincedisa in moving forward nalento ye renewal, because lento yenziwa ignorant of branch secretaries. Where all secretaries will tell you that we don't have that in membership corner, but people, they don't know how to load as the membership, kule new membership system. So ndiyabulela Che, nkosi kakhulu ngelithuba usinike lona. Thank you very much, comrades.
Comrade Andile Mosha.
Thanks, Comrade Skara. Comrade Skara, I just have some few remarks in relation to the contribution as made by comrades, as led by Comrade Umandash. You know, comrades, at some point, people will say, you have been admiring these good reports that have been presented in conferences and congresses, as well as the resolutions that have been taken. Then, what is it that have you done to implement them? I think that question we must keep asking ourselves, and we must be able to answer it. I just have a question in relation to, on a spirit of a revolutionary question, Comrade Mandashi. Is it not time for the ANC to adopt a left ideological orientation now? I'm asking this because majority of people who are supporting ANC are from the working class. Then two, what is in reference to the superiority role that is played by the judiciary currently in South Africa? In that status of constitutional democracy, is it not coming up as a hindrance on things that we should have managed to do if, for instance, we were practicing parliamentary democracy? Then on organizational renewal, kukona le approach where chair we adopted it in Polokwane. But up until now, we keep reinventing it because seemingly is not happening. Is it not mhlambi translating what you once said that i-problem apha sifuna ukuthi iwine intsha kodwa siyifake ebhotileni entsha kodwa iwine endala? Then the last one, Chair, relates to say, among other things that are causing serious problems where we are seated in our communities, as many of us as leaders, when we are elected, we leave those areas. Now we don't get affected. For instance, we don't affected when amanzi engekho. Now abantu who are leaders, they become new citizens of towns as well as cities. How can we prevent this going forward? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Comrade Mosha. Comrade Ndabeni.
Thank you, Slalo. Let me greet National Chairperson Slalo kunye no leadership okhoyo kule lekhaya namhlanje Slalo ndingazohlulanga ke izihlalo zabo. Chair, umna ndifuna uthetha kule point ebethetha kuyo uhlalo ye-counter propaganda directed to the ANC. I think it touches me very well. Chair, kukho lo mcimbi wentoba anger and emotion are strategically counter productive. Leyo nto iyaziwa nangubani na. So we must always, all the time, stay calm and objective in order sincedise ukuphila kwe-ANC ikwazi ukwanda phakathi kwabantu, because we are in power. Sifuna usebenzela uhlala kwi-power, Chair. Asicontest i-power, we are already in power, sisebenzela uhlala kwi-power. Ndithi ke, Chair, let us conserve our forces and energy by keeping us concentrated at our strongest point, Chair. Ngokuthi kukho lento ye-SWOT analysis, Chair, yasetyenziswa kakumbi ke kule nto ye-workshops ze-institutions. Xa uyijonga, Chair, SWOT analysis iyakuchazela mos strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Thina sigxila kakhulu ngoku ANC kwi-weaknesses zethu. Naba bangena capacity as members of the ANC bakwazi ukuqhwetha as weaknesses bakhwele enxebeni. Asizijongi opportunities apha, Chair, ezinokuncedisa our movement imove phambili, sihlale sikwi-power, Chair, sikwazi ulungiselela abantu bethu. Ndiyithetha ke le nto, Chair, ndisazi into okokuba sikweli xesha ngoku sijonge kulo, National Chairperson, Comrade Kote Matashe. Ndiyakubulela tata into yoba umzekelo apha e-Eastern Cape bekukho iprogram apha endi-alayina ke kule program ethi ekukhuthi izikuta. Ndenza nje umzekelo ngale. Sithi kuqala zinkokheli eziseburhulumenteni ezithatha icala a certain part of the Eastern Cape, sithi lilo eli-more previously disadvantaged, ezizikuta mazisiwe pha, sinika abantu into othetha. Kutenza ingekho nje apha endaba kodwa nathi sinazo ii-valleys apha, sinawo amatyotyombe ezizikuta bezinosini noba zibini. Just sikwazi, Chair, ukucounter le propaganda i-directed, because umntu olapha eNdlambe okanye usekurha okanye kwi-edge yethu ngapha ngaseKapa akayazi ezi zikuta abazihamba njani. Kanti xa zikhona zimbini pha, umzekelo kule ndawo athetha kuyo ngoku Comrade Divorce, it's a vastest area also leya ebifuna loo nto. Ndizama ubonisa, Chair, indlela thina esifuna ucinga ngayo, Chair. We don't take in considering le nto ithethwa ngu-National Chair, counter i-propaganda directed to the movement. sihlale Chair sikham ngalo lonke ixesha even apha amongst us thina as members ANC. But ke into evamileyo sihlalo we-region yile nto uba kufuneke siqhwabele intlanzi ekhuphayo. Intlanzi mos izalela ukuba asinaze siqhwabele intlanzi kuphi semanzini nje. Funeke thina kuqala sivume singa-insultani xa sithathana forward ngokukhulisa umbutho. But ke isibe ngathi kukho abangenza bhetele kwabanye le nto nje kanti funeke siginye ubuthina bethu. Ngakumbi after le lecture ayibekayo uhlala. Ke siginye ubuthina bethu siyazi into yoba the ANC did not join us. We joined the ANC. Asiyenzeli ifavor ke ngaloo nto nje. We must keep on adhering ii-duties nakwi-rights zobulungu bethu siqinisekise into yoba nje si-advocasa ii-policies ze-ANC to the people nje. Even to our local radio station nje, simple things. Suppose ii-branches zethu ziyayi-alawa la program into yoba siyaya phaya si-advocase ezi lanto policies ze-ANC nje are not meant uba funeke zichazwe ngumeya wengingqi, are not meant uba funeke zichazwe ngu-provincial chairperson nje. Sonke sibambisene ngokwe-areas zethu nje. Singakha ke ngoku i-ANC e-united and moving forward nje. Kulo mcimbi ke we-organizational renewal xa ndizawulenda nje ndiyayifuna ukuyichaza le. Uba ngabi i-top 6 yethu of the ANC is not united, even thus in a simple message nje ufumanise into yoba kune-different signal izawubethela phi uza kuthi ezantsi nje. Funeke uqale bona kuqala nje babe robust in terms of debate kodwa xa bephuma ayipractice le nto yoba ngoku nantsi i-democratic centralism ithatha indawo. Let us allow it nje singakhawuntani xa si-explaina ii-outcomes ze-meeting nje. Ndiyafuna ke nje ukuthi nam ndiyalibulela eli thuba ngakumbi xa ndibona nedeploy yethu umama uMatane khona kule program. Mandibulele ke sihlalo, enkosi. Ndiyatshona.
Comrade Mzobanse, last speaker.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. The Nazareth discussion document on organizational renewal argues that the ANC must maintain its dual character of being a liberation movement, therefore consists of revolutionaries, and a political party which in the main consists of careerists. Because of this characterization, the ANC has somehow post-1994 recruited careerists who joined the ANC for employment purposes and so on. So my two questions are, should we not go back to basics to maintain our character as a liberation movement? Because for as long as there is poverty, inequality, the NDR is not yet achieved. Therefore, maintain revolutionaries and politically educate those members that that would subscribe or be viewed as revolutionary. The second question is, to renew the ANC, should we not close the membership? Close in the sense that we have a cutoff date to say, okay, Comrade Joel Nechitenze in another political lecture spoke of reapplying of ANC members with a police clearance, etc., therefore close the membership and politically educate those who are within the ANC, but still maintain the ANC's role of mobilizing and leading society through the support base. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, comrades. You have actually contributed immensely in the the content of what has been presented by the national chairperson. I won't allow the Deputy Chair, Comrade Dion, to come in and reconcile. it will be only Comrade Utatu Mandash, so that I can be able to accord Utatu Mandash sufficient time to speak on most of the issues that you have actually raised, where necessary. Equally so, I have to prepare Utatu Mandash in coming in, not to respond on a question of the balance of forces. Hence, tomorrow there is a political class that is going to talk about that particular aspect tomorrow at a provincial level. So Mamukota will be able to respond on whether the balance of forces are still in favor of the forces of the progressive forces of change or not, or either they are tilting or fluid. Tomorrow, there is as well an ideological question from Comrade Andile Mosha on whether perhaps ANC, having declared itself to be, a socialist orientated organization, to consider declare, in terms of its own ideological posture as a socialist organization, and opt to take a socialist ideology. But equally, comrades, there are fundamental issues which were raised by Comrade Tatu Mandash, which perhaps are not responded to. But I must put one other matter into a correct perspective, that the ANC exists within the society. It is not the society that exists within the ANC. And there's a dialectic link between the ANC and the society. And when the ANC now is characterized with all the socio-political ills, it actually affects the entire society, which it projects itself to lead. I think that one is very critical. But second to that, comrades, Marx taught us that a matter always informs consciousness, in as well as practice, help us to generate ideas. So it's important that ultimately, beyond any other thing, we take whatever that we're discussing here into practice. And we must be able to analyze the nature of the society in which we are leading, because helping us to analyze the society in which we are leading will actually give us a pointer as to how do we then begin to resolve issues that are confronting that particular society.
Just before that, Chair, we in appreciating the comments that have been made by Inanziki comrades, we also take note of the comments that were made through the chat box. Thanks, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I allow Comrade Lundu to summarize few issues? I almost forget. Thank you, Comrade Vaha.
I know, Chair, I think we can just proceed because comrades are appreciating the lecture.
Proceed, Mkwati.
Comrade Skara. Let me start off by saying, when you prepare a lecture, one of the efforts, which is always difficult, is to write it in simple language that the audience will follow. It's a very difficult thing to do. You try to break complex concepts and make them simple so that everybody understands. And the assumption is that it is not your most advanced who are a target of a lecture. You are targeting even the actors theos, Mutwoken the Kral Encom. So that is very, very important in dealing with a lecture. And I think, listening to the discussion, I think that objective was achieved. Now, I agree that organizational renewal is a revolutionary task, but what we should understand, let me break further the issue that says the branch should be the main starting point for renewal. I think break it further. It should be the member. It should be the member who is targeted for renewal, because it is the quality of the members that will represent the ANC in a reputable way in any society. I agree with the point of quantity and quality being dialectically interlinked, in the sense that it depends on the quality and number of blows we throw to quantity. If we're going to convert a sufficient number of cadres into being cadres. So that is very important in renewal. We're a leader of society, but what we should always remind ourselves is that we have no claim to that leadership of society. We should earn it. And we can only earn it if we serve that community in a simple way, that they understand the issues we're doing. They will not understand the complex theoretical framework that we work within. That framework must help us to be able to use it as a tool to reach out to that community. The question of cleaning the organization, the cleansing program, I agree with that, but I always caution. I do this consciously because I know it can be pushed to the extremes. In the under the cover of cleansing, we target comrades. We actually purge them. We are left with a leaner organization, and many people get to the outside of the organization. To be able to clean the organization, we must be able that rules are clear and we comply with those rules. Any organization that has no rules cannot cleanse itself. It can only cleanse itself when the rules are clear and the rules are actually applied consistently. That takes me in the moment to the last question of whether the top six is united, or are we countering each other? I think anybody who suspects division in the top six will suspect that. But outright fighting of the top six does not happen. That's why the former Secretary General of the ANC hardly talks to the media on behalf of the organization, unless called upon to do so. But generally, you don't talk to the media as if you are competing with the current Secretary General. And I always emphasize this principle. In an organization like the ANC, you never attack your successor, and you never attack your predecessor. If you have something you see with the predecessor or a successor, you walk to that successor and say, comrade, this way of doing things is not going to be helpful. And that's how you manage it. And I think we are doing that successfully. In this term, we've gone to the media, 6 of us, once. And the reason for that was not because there was an issue of undermining the Secretary General. It was that negative propaganda was so strong against the ANC that we needed to present ourselves there and correct misconceptions in that we'll do it from time to time. We're not going to do it after every NSA. Now, that takes me to a question of ongoing scanning of the environment. If you listen to how I presented this, as I said, a branch of the ANC will be relevant if it's playing an active role on the issues of COVID-19. I'm taking a current issue. Because if you don't talk about that, you talk about the motive forces, society will not understand you. You are going to be irrelevant. You must talk about current issues that affect people directly. And if the biggest topic is corruption, talk to corruption. But in the process, ANC cadres have a bigger responsibility than just shouting on corruption. when we grew up kwakuthiwa ngikwilikani wayikhwaze emgunyeni mayihambe kwabana apho kwiinkomo ezininzi. You can't deal with corruption as if ingukwilikani. You must be able to ring fence corrupt activities, deal with them decisively. That is what you are going to see happening, is underway. That process is underway on its own time, it's moving on and it's beginning to get to people. And ANC members begin to shout, why me? Because so-and-so last year was not taken to task. We are starting the process and it's going to be very thorough. It's going to deal with practical issues. But as a cadre of the ANC, you have another responsibility to say X amount of money was allocated, say to the province or to the department, and this amount was spent on X, Y, and Z. But we have found these areas of corruption that we're dealing with. Then the SIU comes in and attach those people, recover the money, and do all those things. Because if we don't add the good work that the ANC is doing in our dealing with corruption, we are going to be swallowed into corruption, we will be a factor of corruption, and nobody will notice what we are doing. Now, you know, if you listen to the stories of corruption, you find all of them revolve around us. I will tell you why is that the case. You know, the Minister of Small Businesses go to an interview and they ask him, the relief fund that you got, how was it spent? She says 75% of this money was spent on white companies. Now, what we are busy with when we talk about all of us being corrupt is the 25%, basically. But the other thing is the point that was raised by one comrade, Uguti. People don't want us to be in politics and then become rich. Now, I have 4 children here at home, and I always teach them a basic lesson. I say to them, listen guys, go to school. There is no qualification or profession called mandash. Go to school, get qualified, go out there, contest the space. Now, and I give them another lesson, I say, success alienates. Your peers are going to be angry and be jealous if you succeed and they are left behind. And I think the ANC must begin to analyze that reality of whether we are not caught in a situation where we don't want to see anybody close here succeeding and we become jealous and destroy that person. And I think there's a big part of that. I'm not apologizing for corruption. I'm talking about the ANC appreciating itself. You know, Scar, the ANC developed a thick theory about motive forces. Motive forces. And it describes them. It says, motive forces are those who stand to benefit from change. And those people, it lists them. It says, it is the working class and the poor people, it is the intelligentsia, it is capitalist and aspirant capitalists, and all those things. Because the ANC was ahead of its time to appreciate that among its members, there are going to be those who want to be capitalists, and those will be capitalists, but they are beneficiaries of change. They will defend the revolution when it is under threat, because if it was not for the revolution, they would not be developing their aspirations. And the ANC members must begin to appreciate that now. And the importance of this one is that we must live our theory. We must live our theory. ANC must not facilitate benefit of its members only. It is leading society. If there's an entrepreneur in society, the ANC must facilitate the growth of that entrepreneur, whether that entrepreneur is a member of the ANC or not. The ANC must talk to beneficiaries of NSFAS, who are the loudest critics of the ANC. most of the time not meaning to hurt the ANC, but we become more very sensitive from these young emerging intellectuals who are critical of the ANC because we facilitated their development. It is that core of young people who will determine the future of the revolution, because the intellectual capacity that the revolution generates will determine the future and the quality of that revolution. Now, Kaume Monica, Kaume. Now, somebody raised a very important question that we must come out of conferences. And no, we're out of those conferences. But many of us, Sis Nancy, are already working on the next conference. So we're permanently in conference mode. As we come out of NASREC, we're working on the next conference and begin to see a realignment of forces, even here in the province. People were working together, splitting into different factions because factions by their nature mutate. Now, the mutation of factions is going to create new factions out of a particular faction that was winning in the last conference and were already working on the next conferences. And that is the issue that we must guard against. And I agree, apartheid structures are hard at work. They are dividing the ANC. For example, let me give you an example. Why is it impossible for us to see that the DA is in disarray? We can't, because we're busy fighting amongst ourselves. We can't exploit the gaps and cracks that are so visible in the DA, where DA is cleansing itself of black members. Why don't we exploit that? Because I see the enemy from within. Now, I agree, people who use the ANC to loot are the enemies of the ANC. Now, I agree every revolutionary must rise and defend the ANC. Now, let me talk to the diagnosis report. You know, I read that report quietly all the time. But I know that when we brought it to the policy conference, there was a huge uproar not to present it until we presented, thanks to the Eastern Cape, to lead the defense of it. But if we didn't want to use it, to read it in the conference, I knew as we left that conference that we'll hardly use it to try and correct the ANC. We can pull it, take points, not as a report, points that will help us to rebuild the ANC as part of the renewal. Many of the points that were used, that were raised, are actually important. We should do postmortem before we do renewal. Postmortem must be part of the renewal, actually. It should not be postmortem then renewal. Renewal must entail postmortem on some of the issues. There's a point that we always talk, we are not implementing. We have good policies, but we're not implementing. But the question I always ask is, to whom are we complaining? Because we are leading, and if we are weak in leadership, we don't do what we should do, we are going to see spooks around us. We said the judiciary, we said the separation of powers, but when they are in action, we feel that there's conspiracy around them. It's not conspiracy, it's us not rising to the occasion of being leaders. And the second last point I want to raise is the question of, we must never fear development and growth. We must never fear development and growth. We must see many black people were not allowed to be in the cities, going to those cities, because cities and townships are a function of apartheid and separate development. We must go there in numbers and mix them, grow, If we have resources, buy a house there. If you have resources, buy a house in Sandton and buy a house anywhere, because development of growth must not be a threat to us. And we're not new citizens, well, in those areas, and space is created for other people to grow to the leadership. I'm not talking for myself. I still go to Kala, stay in the village, and all those things. But I'm saying we must never run away from development. We must counter propaganda against the history all the time. Finally, dual character of the ANC. I gave you characters of the ANC. Liberation Movement careerists. I don't think that is a dual character. The character is we're a liberation movement. As a liberation movement, we are going to attract all sorts of interests. Others will come to the ANC with the aim of hurting it. We are the mass character. We must take all those characters, take our members through them. But ultimately, our membership must be trained by doing practical work in society. If we don't do that, there's nothing called renewal of the organization. Renewal of the organization is your feet full of dust, filling the streets, talking to the people, keeping the ANC among the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade. National Chairperson, Dr. Mkwat. Comrades, we note that there are still contributions that are being made on the chat box. We take note of those. Amaqabane can continue to contribute through that chat box. We'll give the deputy chairperson of the region, Comrade Discourse, to give us a summary. Deputy Chair, you only have 3 minutes and not more than that to do the summary. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary. I think the chairperson did inform me. Comrade Hobbs will do the conclusion and thanks. All I want to say within my 3 minutes is that we must empower ourselves by reading the documents of the movement. We must repent. Those of us, when we live here, we must assess ourselves and we must rehabilitate so that we can live what we talk in this meeting. We must really walk the talk. It would be of no use for us to sit in all these lectures, but we don't see a change outside and on the grassroots and in the public space. So my plea is that we must walk the talk. There's been a lot of inputs given and a lot of recommendations, and there's a sense of understanding and what is expected of us. But that must be proven by the change in the perception and the trust in the society. So we should not just be having the lecture and leave. We must get the results of these lectures and these political education workshops we are attending by it being reflected in how the ANC's image and reputation is being changed in society. We must not do we must not do the same thing. We have good policies. We are weak on implementation, and we don't do, and that is a weakness. So we must not sit. We talk very good in these workshops, but we don't see the change we talk when we leave these meetings. We must, in Sarah Baartman in particular, Deputy Secretary, we must first go and build our organization in the region, build our structures, and in building them, we build them as the national chairperson have already said, it must go in conjunction with the renewal as we build, because our structures are very weak. We must use these lectures as part of enriching the building of the ANC and renew it whilst we build it. We must act firmly against wrongdoing, and there should be no untouchables. we must act firm in applying the policies, principles, constitution, and the discipline of the ANC. And there shouldn't be any untouchables. In our district and in our region in particular, and in the country and in the province, we must stop fighting in social media and want to portray ourselves as superior than the structures of the ANC and the leadership of the ANC. We must refrain from that, and then we must raise our issues as we have been doing now in this session. There's nothing wrong with us raising our issues, but we must participate in social media. But our participation there should be constructively, should be to constructively engage in the battle of ideas to get the correct narrative out there, and not for our own image, and rather fighting and destroying the ANC. Let us make our people proud of the ANC again as they were. And I think this process of renewal is part of making our people proud of the ANC again and winning back their confidence. And I believe we are able to do it, and these processes and these programs will assist us. These discussions must be reflected in the change perception of the ANC in the public domain. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Nobala, Comrade H, you will come in to do the closing. Nobala, Comrade H. Comrade H.
I'm here, Comrade Wacha. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Nopala. Over to you to do the closing remarks.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Wacha, Deputy Secretary. Comrades, good evening. My name is Johannes Hobbs. I'm the Regional Secretary here in Baartman. Comrades, allow me on behalf of the entire REC collective led by Comrade Skara and Jadai to express our appreciation, firstly to yourself, Comrade National Chairperson. You are not new here in Baartman. It's not the first time that we are hosting you and and you are addressing us. And we are starting to claim you now as part of Baartman. Our appreciation also the PEC collective under the leadership of Oscar Mabuni, the Political Education Committee in the province, and also to all participants in tonight's lecture. Your inputs, comrades, your comments, proposals that came across are taken very serious here in Baartman. Our leaders, members from all over the province who participated and logged into the lecture, we greatly appreciate you being part of the lecture. Chairperson, in conclusion, you know, here in Baartman, we had an REC meeting a week ago, and as a practical implementation of renewal in the region and in the REC, we have started or taken that decision as directed by the national office that all REC members, mayors, MMCs, all councillors, we have started the process of completing our declaration of assets, shareholding, directorships of companies, and make our source of income known. And within the next week, the Regional Secretary's Office will be able to hand over these declarations to the PEC. Comrades, this is the first lecture as part of a number of lectures, political lectures that will be held in mid of September we are planning to have another political lecture where we would want to focus particularly on local government. Then we will also have a third lecture that will deal with the national question. Those branch members that are here coming from Beiersnodie. We just want to remind you that we will be in Willowmore as the REC on Sunday the 13th, focusing on what 8, 9, 12, and 13. And on Monday, we are going to have the cluster meetings in Kouga together with the PEC deployees. Lastly, comrades, you are all reminded that tomorrow the province is hosting a political lecture with the topic, the NDR and Battle of Ideas. That lecture will be led by Comrade Kota, and it starts at 5 o'clock. The link will be distributed to all. Once again, comrades, thank you very much for the participation. Thank you for being with us. And we see you in the next lecture. Amandla.
Thank you very much, comrades. Have a blessed